The marriage faded at exactly 3:47 p.m. on a Tuesday, right there in Maya's Honda Civic at the intersection of Harbor Street and Main. I know the precise time because I was staring at the dashboard clock, wondering why my wife's phone had just auto-connected to the car's Bluetooth system when she wasn't even in the vehicle. "Once he signs the house over, we're completely free, Bran." Maya's voice filled the car speakers with crystal clarity. "Owen's too trusting. He actually believes I want joint ownership for tax purposes." Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. I pulled into the nearest parking spot, hands trembling slightly as I gripped the steering wheel. 41 years old, and I was learning my wife was planning to screw me over through her own forgotten phone connection. The irony wasn't lost on me. "What about the real estate business?" came the male voice I now recognized as Brandon Keller, that smug tech consultant who'd been hanging around our social circle lately. "Won't he get suspicious if you push too hard?" Maya laughed, and it was a sound I'd never heard before. Cold, calculating, nothing like the woman I'd married 8 years ago. "Owen thinks he's so smart with his little real estate empire, but he's clueless about what's really important. The house is worth $400,000, Bran. Once it's in my name too, we can force a sale, take our half, and disappear to Portland. Maybe even California. And leave him with what? His precious office and whatever dignity he has left. Though honestly, after I'm done, there won't be much of either." I sat there for another 10 minutes, listening to them plan my financial execution with the casual tone most people use to discuss dinner plans. They covered everything: how Maya would convince me to add her to the deed for estate planning purposes, how she'd been documenting my unreasonable behavior to justify a messy divorce, and how Bran had already found them a condo in Portland where they could start fresh. The best part? They actually thought they were being clever. I'm Owen Kincaid, and I've been selling real estate in Millfield, Maine for 15 years. I've seen every scam, every scheme, every desperate attempt to separate honest people from their property. I've watched marriages implode over mortgage applications and witnessed families destroy each other over inheritance disputes. But I never thought I'd be getting a front row seat to my own betrayal, courtesy of automotive technology. When I finally drove home, Maya was in the kitchen, preparing what she probably thought was a perfectly innocent dinner. She looked up with that practiced smile she'd been wearing lately, the one that never quite reached her eyes. "How was your day, honey?" she asked, stirring something that smelled like guilt and marinara sauce. "Interesting," I replied, hanging my keys on the hook by the door. "Learned some new things about modern technology. Amazing what you can pick up when you're paying attention." She paused for just a fraction of a second, long enough for me to catch it, but not long enough for her to realize I'd noticed. "Oh, like what?" "Bluetooth connections mostly. How they can connect automatically to devices you've forgotten about. How they can share information you might not want shared." I opened the refrigerator and grabbed a beer, keeping my voice conversational. It's fascinating how much people reveal when they think nobody's listening. Maya's stirring became more aggressive. "That sounds complicated." "Not really. It's actually quite simple once you understand the system." I took a long drink and watched her over the bottle. The key is knowing how to use the information properly. That night, after Maya fell asleep beside me, I lay awake staring at the ceiling and planning. Not revenge. Not yet. First, I needed to understand exactly what I was dealing with. Maya might think she was the spider in this web, but she was about to learn that I'd been in the real estate business long enough to know the difference between predator and prey. And I was definitely not the prey. The next morning, I did something I'd never done in 15 years of marriage. I started investigating my own wife. It felt surreal, like playing detective in my own life. But Maya's Bluetooth confession had made one thing crystal clear. I was already living with a stranger. My office is a small, converted Victorian house on Harbor Street, just 2 blocks from the waterfront. I've got 3 agents working under me, plus Tessa, my 24-year-old assistant who's sharp enough to run the whole operation if she wanted to. Maya always dismissed Tessa as that girl from the office, which was her first mistake. Tessa notices everything. "Morning, Owen," Tessa said as I walked in, coffee in hand. "You look like you didn't sleep much." "Had some things on my mind. Tessa, I need you to do something for me, and it needs to stay between us." She looked up from her computer, suddenly alert. Tessa had grown up in Millfield, watched her own parents go through a nasty divorce when she was 16. She could smell marital trouble from 3 counties away. "What do you need?" "I want you to pull together everything we have on joint property ownership in Maine. Specifically, what happens when one spouse tries to force a sale of jointly owned real estate." Tessa's fingers stopped moving across her keyboard. "Owen, is everything okay at home?" "Let's just say I'm doing some research for a friend." She nodded slowly. We both knew I didn't have friends stupid enough to put themselves in that situation, but Tessa was smart enough to play along. "I'll have it for you by lunch." While Tessa researched property law, I started my own investigation. Maya worked as a paralegal at Hendricks & Associates, a small law firm that handled everything from traffic tickets to estate planning. She'd been staying late more often recently, claiming they were swamped with end-of-year filings. Now I wondered what she was really doing with those extra hours. I started with the obvious stuff: credit card statements, phone records, anything that might show a pattern. Maya was careful, but not careful enough. The credit card showed regular charges at the Anchor Inn, a hotel 20 minutes outside town, always on Thursday afternoons, always for exactly 3 hours. The phone records showed dozens of calls to Brandon Keller's number, including several that lasted over an hour. But the real gold mine was Maya's laptop. She'd left it open on the kitchen counter that morning, probably rushing to get to work after our conversation the night before, had made her nervous. I'm not proud of what I did next, but desperate times call for morally flexible measures. Maya had been sloppy with her email security. Her personal account was still logged in, and what I found there made me freeze. Dozens of messages between her and Bran, dating back 6 months. They'd been planning this for half a year. The emails were a masterclass in betrayal. Maya had been documenting every argument we'd had, every time I'd worked late, every moment of normal marital tension, and spinning it into evidence of an incompatible marriage. She'd even taken photos of the house, inside and out, with detailed notes about renovations and improvements that would increase its market value. But the worst part was how they talked about me. "Owen's so predictable," one email read. "He actually thanked me yesterday for taking an interest in our financial planning. He has no idea I'm planning to take half of everything he's worked for." Bran's response was even worse. "Small-town real estate guys like him are all the same. They think they're big shots, but they're just fish in a tiny pond. Once we get to Portland, you'll see what real success looks like." I printed everything. Every email, every photo, every casual insult they'd traded at my expense. Then I carefully cleared the browser history and closed the laptop, leaving everything exactly as Maya had left it. By the time Tessa had finished her research, I had a complete picture of my wife's betrayal and a growing plan for what to do about it. "Here's what you wanted," Tessa said, handing me a thick folder. "Maine property law is actually pretty clear about jointly owned real estate. Both parties have to agree to any sale, and if one spouse tries to force it through divorce proceedings, the other spouse has significant protection, especially if they can prove the property was acquired through their own business efforts." "What about if someone was tricked into adding a spouse to the deed?" Tessa raised an eyebrow. "That would be fraud, voidable contract. The person who was tricked could potentially have the fraudulent transfer reversed." She paused. "Owen, your friend isn't actually you, is he?" "What makes you say that?" "Because Maya called here an hour ago asking about Maine property law. Said she was researching something for a client at her firm. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. Maya was accelerating her timeline, which meant I needed to accelerate mine. Tessa, I need you to prepare some paperwork for me, quietly, and I need you to call my sister Sophie. Sophie Kincaid Morrison was a real estate attorney in Portland, 5 years older than me, and absolutely ruthless when it came to protecting family. If Maya wanted to play legal games, she was about to discover that I had better lawyers. As I waited for Sophie to call back, I sat in my office looking out at Millfield Harbor, watching the fishing boats come in with their afternoon catch. This town had been my whole world for 41 years. I'd built my business here, bought my house here, married my wife here. Maya was planning to take half of everything I'd worked for and then disappear to start a new life with her tech consultant boyfriend. She thought I was just a small-town real estate guy who wouldn't see it coming. She was about to learn how wrong she was. Sophie called back within an hour, which told me everything I needed to know about how seriously she was taking this situation. My sister had built her reputation by being the kind of lawyer other lawyers called when they were in trouble themselves. Tessa filled me in on the basics, Sophie said without preamble. How bad is it? Bad. Maya's been planning this for 6 months. She wants me to add her to the house deed, then force a sale through divorce proceedings. She's already got a boyfriend lined up and a place picked out in Portland. Jesus, Owen, I'm sorry. Don't be sorry, be helpful. What are my options? I could hear Sophie's keyboard clicking in the background as she talked. First, don't add her to the deed, obviously. Second, we need to protect your assets immediately. The house is in your name only? Yes. I bought it 3 years before we got married. Good. What about the business? Sole proprietorship, my name only. Maya never showed any interest in being involved. Even better. Owen, I'm going to ask you something, and I need you to think carefully before you answer. Do you want to try to save this marriage, or do you want to end it on your terms? I looked out my office window at the harbor, watching a seagull fight with a crab over some scrap of food. The seagull was bigger, but the crab had claws. I want to end it, I said, but I want Maya to understand exactly what she's losing before she loses it. Sophie was quiet for a moment. That's not the same thing as revenge, Owen. Isn't it? Revenge is about making someone suffer. What you're talking about sounds more like education. Call it whatever you want. Can you help me or not? I can help you, but we're going to do this right. No illegal surveillance, no hacking, no stolen documents. Everything we do has to be absolutely clean, because if Maya's as calculating as you say, she'll be looking for any excuse to paint you as the bad guy. Over the next 2 hours, Sophie walked me through a strategy that was both elegant and ruthless. We would let Maya think her plan was working while systematically removing every advantage she thought she had. By the time she realized what was happening, it would be too late for her to recover. The first step was the house deed. Instead of refusing Maya's request outright, I would tell her I needed to think about it. Meanwhile, Sophie would prepare a trust document that would transfer ownership of the house to a family trust, with me as the sole beneficiary and Sophie as the trustee. Maya couldn't claim half of something I didn't technically own anymore. The second step was documentation. Every conversation, every email, every interaction with Maya would be carefully recorded and preserved. Maine was a one-party consent state, which meant I could record conversations as long as I was part of them. The third step was the most important. I would give Maya exactly what she thought she wanted, but not in the way she expected. This is going to take time, Sophie warned me, and it's going to be emotionally brutal. You're going to have to live with Maya, sleep next to her, act like a loving husband, all while knowing she's planning to destroy you. Are you sure you can handle that? Sophie, I've been doing it for 6 months without knowing it. Now that I know what she's really thinking, it should be easier. Okay, but Owen, when this is over, Maya's going to hate you, and so will anyone who takes her side. You need to be prepared for that. I'm prepared for a lot of things. The question is whether Maya is. That evening I went home and played the role of the oblivious husband. Maya had made dinner again, pasta with that same marinara sauce that was starting to taste like betrayal. She asked about my day, and I told her about a difficult client who was trying to back out of a sale. "That's terrible," Maya said, her voice full of synthetic sympathy. "People can be so dishonest." "They can," I agreed, "but usually they're not as clever as they think they are. Most people who try to cheat the system end up getting caught because they underestimate the other person." Maya's fork paused halfway to her mouth. "What do you mean?" "Oh, just that dishonest people tend to assume everyone else is as dishonest as they are. So they don't prepare for the possibility that they're dealing with someone who's actually trustworthy." I took a bite of pasta and smiled at her. "They think they're playing chess, but the other person is playing a completely different game." That's an interesting way to put it. I've been thinking a lot about games lately, strategy games, specifically. The key to winning isn't having the best opening move. It's understanding what your opponent is trying to do and staying 3 steps ahead of them. Maya had stopped eating entirely now. "Owen, is there something you want to talk about?" "Actually, yes. You mentioned last week that we should consider adding your name to the house deed, for estate planning purposes." I watched her face carefully. For just a moment, I saw a flash of triumph in her eyes before she covered it with concern. "Only if you think it's a good idea," she said carefully. "I know the house is important to you." "It is. That's why I want to make sure we handle this properly. I've been thinking about setting up a family trust. It would protect both of us, and it might have some tax advantages." This wasn't what Maya had expected. I could see her mind working, trying to figure out how a trust would affect her plans. "That sounds complicated," she said finally. "Not really. I'll have Sophie draw up the paperwork. We can review it together and make sure it's exactly what we both want." Maya nodded, but I could see the wheels turning. She was probably already planning to call Bran and figure out how to work around this new development. Let her plan. While she was trying to outmaneuver a trust she didn't understand, I'd be 3 steps ahead, just like I'd promised. After dinner, Maya said she had some work to catch up on and disappeared into the home office with her laptop. I cleaned the dishes and thought about the conversation I'd just had. For the first time since hearing that Bluetooth confession, I felt like I was back in control. Maya thought she was hunting me, but she was about to learn that in this particular game, she was the prey. 3 weeks later, Maya made her first real mistake. She got greedy. I was in my office reviewing contracts when Tessa knocked on my door with an expression I'd learned to recognize. The look she got when she discovered something interesting. "Owen, you need to see this." She handed me a printout of an email that had been sent to our office's general inquiry address. The sender was listed as M. Henderson, but I recognized Maya's writing style immediately. "Dear Kincaid Realty," the email read, "I'm interested in getting a market analysis for a property at 47 Maple Street. The owners are considering a sale in the next few months, and I'd like to understand the current market value. Please contact me at this email address with your availability." 47 Maple Street was my address. Maya was trying to get a professional appraisal of our house without telling me. "When did this come in?" I asked. "This morning. I recognized the address immediately, but I wanted to check with you before responding." "What name is she using?" "Emsa Henderson. But Owen, that's not the interesting part." Tessa pulled up another email on her computer. She sent the same request to 3 other real estate agencies in town, and she's been calling around asking about hypothetical divorce proceedings involving real estate assets. I leaned back in my chair, impressed, despite myself. Maya was being thorough. She wanted multiple appraisals so she could argue for the highest possible value, and she was researching her legal options in advance. If I hadn't already known what she was planning, I might have admired her preparation. "Tessa, I want you to respond to Monsieur Henderson. Tell her we'd be happy to provide a market analysis, but we'll need to schedule an appointment to view the property in person." "You want to meet with her?" "I want to see how far she's willing to go with this charade." While Tessa set up the appointment, I called Sophie to update her on Maya's latest move. "She's getting bolder," Sophie said. "That's good for us. The more documentation we have of her planning this behind your back, the stronger your position becomes." "What about the trust paperwork?" "Ready for your signature. Once you sign, the house legally belongs to the Kincaid Family Trust, with you as the sole beneficiary. Maya can't claim community property rights on something you don't own." "And if she tries to challenge it?" "She'd have to prove the trust was created specifically to defraud her of marital assets. But since she's been secretly planning to trick you into adding her to the deed so she can force a sale, that's going to be a tough argument to make." That afternoon, Maya came home from work with an energy I hadn't seen in months. She was practically bouncing as she made dinner, humming some song I didn't recognize. "You seem happy," I observed. "Just had a good day at work. Sometimes everything falls into place, you know?" "I do know. I had one of those days myself." Maya looked up from the stove. "Oh? What happened?" "Signed some paperwork that's been in the works for a while. Legal stuff, but important. The kind of thing that changes everything once it's official." I watched her face carefully, but Maya was getting better at hiding her reactions. "That sounds significant." "It is. Sophie says it's going to protect our family's interests for years to come." Maya's stirring became more aggressive. "Sophie's been involved in your business decisions lately?" "She's my sister and my lawyer. Of course she's involved. I just think it's interesting that you're making legal decisions without discussing them with your wife first." I set down my beer and looked at her directly. "Maya, when was the last time you discussed a major decision with me before making it?" She blinked, clearly not expecting the question. "What do you mean?" "I mean, marriage is supposed to be a partnership, but lately it feels like we're both making plans without consulting each other." "I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't you?" "Maya, I know you've been unhappy. I know you've been thinking about our future, about whether this marriage is what you really want." Maya turned off the stove and faced me completely. For a moment, I thought she might actually tell me the truth. "Owen, every marriage goes through rough patches. That doesn't mean I'm planning anything." "I didn't say you were planning anything. I just said you've been thinking about our future." "Well, yes. Of course I think about our future, don't you?" "All the time. In fact, I've been thinking we should probably have an honest conversation about what we both want." Maya's eyes widened slightly. This was definitely not going according to her script. "What kind of conversation?" "The kind where we both stop pretending everything is fine and admit that we've been growing apart. The kind where we talk about what happens next." "Owen, I don't think—" "Maya, I know about Bran." The words hung in the air between us like a challenge. Maya went completely still, her face cycling through surprise, fear, and calculation before settling on defiance. "I don't know what you think you know. I know you've been meeting him at the Anchor Inn every Thursday afternoon for the past 3 months. I know you've been planning to ask me to add your name to the house deed. I know you think I'm too stupid to figure out what's really going on." Maya's face had gone pale, but her voice stayed steady. "You're paranoid, Owen. Bran is just a friend. Friends don't usually spend 3 hours in hotel rooms together every week." "We're not—" Maya started, then stopped herself. "You've been spying on me." "I've been paying attention. There's a difference." Maya grabbed her purse from the counter and headed for the door. "I'm not going to stand here and listen to accusations." "Where are you going, Maya?" She turned back to look at me, and for the first time since I'd known her, I saw something like hatred in her eyes. "Somewhere I can think clearly." After she left, I sat in the kitchen finishing my dinner and thinking about the conversation we'd just had. Maya hadn't denied anything specific, which meant she was probably calling Bran right now, trying to figure out how much I actually knew and what they should do about it. Let them panic. While they were scrambling to adjust their plans, I'd be implementing mine. The next morning, Tessa told me that M. Henderson had canceled her appointment for the property appraisal. Apparently, she'd decided to postpone any real estate decisions for the time being. Maya didn't come home that night, or the next night. On Friday morning, I got a text message. Staying at Leah's for a few days. Need some space to think. I texted back, take all the time you need. What Maya didn't know was that while she was taking space to think, I was taking space to act, and by the time she came back, the game would be completely different. Maya stayed at her friend Leah's house for exactly 1 week. When she finally came home the following Friday evening, she found me in the living room reading a book and drinking coffee as if nothing had happened. Owen, we need to talk. I looked up from my book. Appropriately, it was a legal thriller about a man who discovers his wife is trying to steal his business. I'm listening. Maya sat down across from me, and I could see she'd spent the week preparing for this conversation. Her posture was confident, her voice steady. She thought she held all the cards. I've been doing a lot of thinking about our marriage, about what we both want from life. I think we need to be honest about the fact that we've grown apart. I agree. She blinked, clearly not expecting me to agree so readily. You do? Maya, I've known for months that you weren't happy. The question is what we do about it. I think we should consider a separation, maybe eventually a divorce. Okay. Another blink. Okay? Maya, I'm not going to fight to keep someone who doesn't want to be kept. If you want a divorce, we'll get a divorce. Relief flooded her face, followed immediately by calculation. I think we should try to handle this amicably, split things fairly, avoid lawyers if possible. What did you have in mind? Well, the house is our biggest asset. I think we should sell it and split the proceeds. I know it's in your name, but we've been married for 8 years. I've contributed to the mortgage payments, helped with renovations. Actually, Maya, there's something I need to tell you about the house. Her confident expression faltered slightly. What? I transferred ownership to a family trust last month. The house isn't technically mine anymore. Maya went very still. What do you mean, a family trust? I mean, the house is owned by the Kincaid Family Trust, administered by Sophie. It was part of some estate planning we've been working on. You can't do that. You can't just transfer marital assets without my consent. Maya, the house was never a marital asset. I owned it before we got married, and Maine law is very clear about separate property versus community property. I could see her mind racing, trying to figure out how this affected her plans. When did you do this? The day after you asked me about adding your name to the deed. Maya's face went through several expressions before settling on anger. You did this because you don't trust me. I did this because you gave me reason not to trust you. Owen, I don't know what you think. Maya, stop. I know about Bran. I know about your plan to get your name on the deed and force a sale. I know about the emails, the hotel meetings, the whole thing. Maya stood up abruptly, pacing to the window. You've been spying on me. I've been protecting myself from someone who was planning to steal half of everything I've worked for. She turned back to face me, and now the mask was completely off. The Maya I was looking at was someone I'd never seen before. Cold, calculating, and furious at being outmaneuvered. You think you're so smart, don't you? Small-town real estate king, always one step ahead. Smart enough to see through your plan. My plan? Owen, my plan was to get away from you in this pathetic little town and build a real life with someone who actually has ambition. How's that working out for you? Maya's laugh was bitter. Better than you think. Bran has a job offer in California. Tech company, 6-figure salary. We were going to use the money from the house to relocate. Were? Are. We'll find another way. I stood up and walked to the kitchen, returning with a manila folder that I placed on the coffee table between us. What's that? Maya asked. Divorce papers. Sophie drew them up. No contest. Clean split. You can keep your car, your personal belongings. Your retirement account from the law firm. I keep the house, the business, and my accounts. Maya stared at the folder like it might explode. You can't be serious. I'm completely serious. Sign the papers, and you're free to start your new life with Bran immediately. This is ridiculous. I'm entitled to half of everything. Actually, you're not. Maine law is very specific about separate property acquired before marriage. Sophie's research was quite thorough. Maya picked up the folder and flipped through the papers, her face growing paler with each page. You're trying to leave me with nothing. I'm trying to give you exactly what you wanted, freedom from this marriage and this town. The only difference is, you don't get to steal my house to finance your escape. Owen, you can't do this to me. Maya, I'm not doing anything to you. I'm simply refusing to let you do something to me. She threw the folder back on the table, papers scattering. I'll fight this. I'll get my own lawyer. With what money? Your credit cards are maxed out from all those hotel visits, and I doubt Bran's going to pay for a legal battle he can't win. Maya stared at me for a long moment, and I could see her trying to figure out if I was bluffing. I wasn't. How long have you known? She asked finally. Long enough to protect myself. And you just let me keep planning? Let me think I was going to get away with it? I wanted to see how far you'd go. I wanted to understand exactly who I'd been married to. Maya sank back into her chair, looking deflated for the first time since I'd known her. So, what happens now? Now you decide whether you want to sign those papers and leave with your dignity intact, or whether you want to drag this out in court and lose publicly. What do you mean, lose publicly? I picked up another folder from the side table, this one much thicker than the first. I mean, I have documentation of everything, Maya. Every email between you and Bran, every hotel receipt, every lie you told me about working late. If this goes to court, all of that becomes public record. Maya's face went white. You wouldn't. I wouldn't want to. But if you force me to defend myself, I'll use every piece of evidence I have. She stared at the second folder like it contained her own downfall, which, in a way, it did. I need time to think. You have until Monday. After that, I file anyway, and you lose the option of handling this quietly. Maya gathered up the scattered divorce papers and stood up. I hate you, Owen. I know. But you hated me before you knew I was smart enough to protect myself. At least now your hatred is honest. After Maya left, this time I suspected for good, I sat in my living room thinking about the conversation we'd just had. 8 years of marriage, and it had come down to legal documents and threats of public humiliation. But as I looked around the house I'd worked so hard to buy and maintain, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Peace. For the first time since that Bluetooth confession, I was sleeping in my own bed without wondering what my wife was planning to steal from me. Maya had wanted her freedom. Now she was going to get it, just not in the way she'd expected. Maya didn't sign the papers by Monday. Instead, she hired a lawyer. Thomas Brennan was a divorce attorney from Portland with a reputation for aggressive tactics and expensive fees. He specialized in cases where one spouse was trying to claim assets from a financially successful partner. Maya had apparently convinced him that I was hiding marital assets and that she deserved half of everything I owned. Brennan's first move was to file for temporary spousal support and demand a complete financial disclosure of my business and personal accounts. His second move was to challenge the validity of the family trust, claiming it was created specifically to defraud Maya of her marital rights. His third move was to underestimate Sophie. Owen, this is actually good news, Sophie told me over the phone after receiving Brennan's initial filing. He's making exactly the arguments we expected, which means Maya told him her version of events without mentioning the part where she was planning to defraud you first. What's our next move? We give him exactly what he's asking for. Complete financial disclosure, full documentation of the trust creation, everything. But we also include some additional materials he's not expecting. The additional materials were the emails between Maya and Bran, the hotel receipts, the phone records, and a detailed timeline of Maya's deception. Sophie packaged it all together in a response brief that was both legally devastating and personally humiliating. But the real masterstroke was Sophie's decision to file a countersuit. "We're claiming intentional infliction of emotional distress, attempted fraud, and breach of fiduciary duty," Sophie explained. "Maya entered into this marriage with the intention of eventually stealing your assets. That's not just grounds for divorce, it's grounds for damages. Can we actually win that? Owen, we have her own emails describing her plan to trick you into signing over the house. We have documentation of her affair and her intention to use marital assets to finance her relocation with another man. Yes, we can win." The countersuit changed everything. Suddenly, Maya wasn't just asking for half of my assets. She was facing the possibility of owing me money. Brennan went from aggressive to defensive practically overnight. But Maya herself had a different reaction. She went nuclear. The first sign of trouble came when Frank Morrison, who owned the Harbor Grill, where most of Millfield's business community ate lunch, called to warn me that Maya had been there spreading stories about my abusive behavior and financial manipulation. "Owen, I've known you for 15 years, Frank said. "I don't believe a word of it. But she's got Leah and some of her other friends backing her up, and people are starting to talk." The second sign came when 3 of my clients called to postpone scheduled appointments. Maya was apparently telling anyone who would listen that I was vindictive and dishonest, that I'd hidden assets to avoid a fair divorce settlement. The third sign came when someone spray-painted "liar" across the front window of my office. I was cleaning off the paint when Tessa arrived for work, took one look at the situation, and shook her head. "She's panicking," Tessa said matter-of-factly. "Maya? When people can't win legally, they try to win socially. Maya's trying to destroy your reputation before the divorce goes to trial." "Is it working?" "With some people, probably. But Owen, most people in this town know you. They know what kind of person you are and what kind of business you run. Maya's been here 8 years, but she never really became part of the community. She always acted like she was too good for Millfield." Tessa was right, but Maya's campaign was still having an effect. My business was suffering, and I could feel people staring when I walked down Main Street. Maya had turned our divorce into a public spectacle, and she was playing the role of the wronged wife to perfection. Which is why Sophie's next move was so brilliant. "We're going to give Maya exactly what she wants," Sophie told me. "A public forum to tell her story." "What do you mean?" "I mean, we're going to request a public hearing for the divorce proceedings. Maya wants to play this out in front of the whole town? Fine. Let's see how her story holds up when she has to tell it under oath." The hearing was scheduled for a Thursday morning at the Millfield Courthouse. By the time it started, the small courtroom was packed with what felt like half the town. Maya sat at the plaintiff's table with Brennan, looking confident and composed. I sat with Sophie, feeling like I was about to watch my entire life get dissected in public. Judge Patricia Henley was a no-nonsense woman in her 60s who'd been handling family court cases for over 20 years. She'd seen every variation of marital dispute imaginable, and she had no patience for theatrics. Brennan started with Maya's testimony, painting a picture of a controlling husband who'd hidden assets and manipulated legal documents to avoid a fair settlement. Maya played her part perfectly, describing years of emotional neglect and financial manipulation. "Mrs. Kincaid," Brennan said, "can you tell the court about your husband's reaction when you asked to be added to the house deed?" "He became very suspicious and secretive," Maya replied. "He started questioning my motives and making me feel like I couldn't be trusted. Then he transferred the house to a trust without telling me." "And how did that make you feel?" "Betrayed. Like he was planning to leave me with nothing." It was a compelling performance, and I could see some people in the courtroom nodding sympathetically. Maya had always been good at presenting herself as the victim. Then Sophie stood up for cross-examination. Mrs. Kincaid, you testified that you felt betrayed when your husband transferred the house to a trust. But isn't it true that you were planning to betray him first? Brennan objected, but Judge Henley allowed the question. I don't know what you mean, Maya said. Sophie approached the witness stand with a folder, the same folder I'd shown Maya weeks earlier. Mrs. Kincaid, do you recognize this email address? Sophie showed Maya a printout. Maya glanced at it and shrugged. It's my personal email. And do you recognize this email, sent from your account to Brandon Keller on March 15th of this year? Sophie read from the printout. Once he signs the house over, we're completely free, Bran. Owen's too trusting. He actually believes I want joint ownership for tax purposes. The courtroom went silent. Maya's face had gone pale, but she tried to maintain her composure. I don't recall that specific email. What about this one, from March 22nd? Owen thinks he's so smart with his little real estate empire, but he's clueless about what's really important. The house is worth $400,000, Bran. Once it's in my name too, we can force a sale, take our half, and disappear to Portland. Maya looked at Brennan desperately, but he was staring at the documents in Sophie's hands with growing horror. Mrs. Kincaid, Sophie continued, isn't it true that you've been having an affair with Mr. Keller for over 6 months? That's not... Isn't it true that you planned to trick your husband into adding your name to the house deed so you could force a sale and use the proceeds to start a new life with your lover? You're taking those emails out of context. What context would make this statement acceptable? Owen's too trusting. What context would justify planning to steal half of your husband's assets? Maya broke down completely. The composed, victimized wife disappeared, replaced by someone desperate and cornered. You don't understand, she said, tears streaming down her face. I was unhappy. I felt trapped. I just wanted a way out. So you decided to finance your escape by stealing your husband's house? It wasn't stealing. I'm his wife. Mrs. Kincaid, you've been married for 8 years. In that time, how much money did you contribute to the purchase of the house? I helped with mortgage payments. The house was paid off before you got married. How much did you contribute to renovations? We both worked on... Mrs. Kincaid, according to these receipts, your husband paid for all renovations himself. You contributed no money to the purchase, improvement, or maintenance of this property. Your only contribution was a plan to steal it. By the time Sophie finished her cross-examination, Maya was sobbing openly and the courtroom was buzzing with shocked whispers. Brennan looked like he wanted to disappear, and Judge Henley looked like she'd seen enough. I'm going to call a recess, Judge Henley announced. When we reconvene, I expect both parties to be prepared to discuss settlement. During the recess, Brennan approached Sophie with a settlement offer that gave Maya almost nothing: her car, her personal belongings, and a small cash payment to help with relocation expenses. In exchange, she would drop all claims to marital assets and agree not to contest the divorce. Maya signed the papers with shaking hands, unable to meet my eyes. As we left the courthouse, I could hear people talking in the parking lot. The story of Maya's deception would be all over town by dinner time. Her plan to destroy my reputation had backfired spectacularly. That evening, I sat in my house, legally and unquestionably mine, and thought about the events of the day. Maya had gotten exactly what she said she wanted: freedom from our marriage and the opportunity to start over somewhere else. She just hadn't gotten to finance her new beginning with my money. 3 days later, Tessa told me that Maya and Bran had left town together, heading for California, where Bran had supposedly lined up that tech job. Whether the job actually existed, or whether they were just running away from the scandal, I didn't know and didn't care. My phone rang as I was locking up the office that Friday evening. It was Sophie. "How are you holding up?" she asked. "Better than I expected. The business is recovering, people have stopped staring at me on the street, and I can sleep in my own bed without wondering what's being planned behind my back." "Any regrets?" I looked out at Millfield Harbor, where the fishing boats were coming in with their evening catch. The same view I'd been looking at for 15 years, from the same office I'd built with my own work, in the same town where I'd grown up. "None," I said. Maya wanted her freedom, and she got it. I wanted to keep what I'd worked for, and I did. Sometimes the good guys actually do win. Even when the good guy has to be a little ruthless? I smiled. Especially then. After I hung up, I walked home through the downtown streets of Millfield, past the Harbor Grill where Frank waved from behind the bar, past the bookstore where Mrs. Chen was closing up for the night, past all the familiar places that made up my world. Maya had been right about one thing. I was a small-town real estate guy in a tiny pond. But what she'd never understood was that sometimes the fish in the small pond are the ones who know how to survive.